She was just seconds away from saying, "I do," when the doors burst open. A billionaire in a pink-dotted scarf stormed in, his dark eyes burning with obsession. "If I can't have you, no one can." And before anyone could react, she was gone, vanished from her own wedding. But what he didn't know, she was about to outsmart him in a way he never saw coming. 98% of you watching haven't subscribed yet. It's completely free and gives us the motivation to bring you more thrilling real-life stories like this. So hit that subscribe button now and be part of our journey. The wedding hall was filled with laughter, love, and the soft melody of a violin playing in the background. Emily stood at the altar, glowing in her white dress, her hands trembling, not with fear, but with excitement. Today she was finally free. Free from the past that had once chained her, free to love, free to start over. She looked into Daniel's eyes, ready to say the two words that would seal her new beginning. But just as she parted her lips, boom! The doors swung open so hard they nearly flew off their hinges. Gasps echoed through the hall. And there he stood, tall, powerful, draped in a perfectly tailored designer suit, with that signature pink-dotted scarf resting on his broad shoulders. Rashid, the Arab billionaire. The man she thought she had escaped forever. His piercing eyes locked onto hers, dark with possession, burning with a madness only a man obsessed could carry. He took one step forward, his voice slicing through the silence like a blade. "Emily, did you really think you could marry someone else?" Before anyone could react, his men surged forward. A scream tore through the air. Guests scrambled. Daniel lunged to protect her, but it was too late. In the blink of an eye, Emily was swept off her feet. Not in the romantic way she had dreamed of, but in the terrifying way nightmares are made of. Her wedding veil floated to the ground as Rashid's men dragged her toward the exit. And as she struggled, kicking and screaming, she could hear him chuckle under his breath, a slow, knowing laugh, the kind that sent shivers down her spine. He leaned in, his breath warm against her ear. "You belong to me, Habibti, and I always take what's mine." And just like that, she was gone, vanished, stolen from her own wedding. But here's the thing. Rashid thought he was in control. He thought he had won. What he didn't know was that Emily was about to play the most dangerous game of her life. And this time, she was going to outsmart him in a way he never saw coming. The private jet cut through the night sky like a silent predator, far away from the wedding chaos Rashid had left behind. Emily sat in the plush leather seat, her wrists bound with silk, an insult more than a restraint. He wanted her comfortable, as if being kidnapped by her ex-husband on her wedding day was anything close to comfort. Rashid sat across from her, his fingers lazily swirling the golden liquid in his glass, eyes locked on her like a hunter watching his prey. "You look beautiful tonight, Emily," he murmured, his voice smooth as honey but laced with something dangerous. "Just like the day I first saw you." Emily's jaw tightened. "You're insane, Rashid. This," she yanked at her restraints, "is insane. Do you really think you can just steal me away like some kind of medieval warlord?" His lips curved into a slow smirk. "I didn't steal you, Habibti. I simply took back what's mine." She let out a sharp, bitter laugh. "Yours? You lost me the day you let your obsession destroy us." A flicker of something crossed his face. Anger, maybe pain, but it vanished as quickly as it came. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Tell me something, Emily. If I truly lost you, why do you still look at me like that?" Her stomach twisted. Because, damn it, a part of her still did look at him like that. Like the man she had once fallen for. The Rashid who had swept her off her feet with his impossible charm, who had whispered promises in the moonlight, who had made her believe she was the center of his universe. But that universe had turned into a gilded cage, and Rashid's love had become something darker, something suffocating. Flashbacks crashed into her like a tidal wave, their whirlwind romance in Dubai, the private yacht, the candle-lit dinners under the desert sky, the way he made her feel like the only woman in the world. But love had its price, and Rashid's love came with rules. Don't wear this, don't talk to him, don't even think about leaving. And when she did leave, he had let her go. Or so she thought. Now, staring at him in this jet, she realized the truth. Rashid had never really let her go. He had just been waiting for the right moment to take her back. Emily straightened her spine, forcing down the fear curling in her chest. I don't love you, Rashid. You can't force someone to love you. His jaw clenched, and for the first time, something cold flashed in his eyes. We'll see about that. As the jet continued soaring into the unknown, Emily knew one thing for certain. Rashid might think he had won, but he had no idea what she was capable of. If he wanted a game, she was about to play her best move yet. The jet landed just before sunrise. The moment Emily stepped out, warm desert air hit her like a wave, dry, heavy, and suffocating, much like the situation she was trapped in. Before her stood a grand estate, isolated in the middle of nowhere, its towering gates and high walls whispering a single, terrifying truth. There was no escape. 2 guards flanked her as Rashid led the way inside, his confidence unshaken. "Welcome home, Habibti," he said smoothly, glancing over his shoulder. "I had a feeling you'd return one day, so I made sure everything was exactly as you left it." Her stomach twisted. The lavish chandeliers, the grand staircase, the scent of jasmine in the air. It was all the same, as if she had never left. But she had left, and she would do it again. "You're wasting your time, Rashid," she snapped. "No amount of silk sheets or golden cages will change the fact that I don't love you." He turned to face her, his jaw tight. "Love is complicated, Emily, but you forget. I know you better than anyone. And I know you don't love him." Her eyes flashed. "You don't get to decide who I love." Rashid exhaled slowly, his fingers running through his dark hair. "You're upset. I get it. But you'll see, with time, that this was the right choice." She scoffed. "Right choice? You kidnapped me off the altar, Rashid. That's not love. That's a crime." He smirked. "And yet, here you are. And where is he? Your precious Daniel? He's not here. I am." That single sentence sent ice through her veins. Because he was right. Daniel wasn't here. And unless she did something, he never would be. But Emily wasn't just some helpless damsel waiting to be rescued. No. She had spent years surviving Rashid's world, learning its rules, studying its weaknesses. And now she was about to use that knowledge against him. Later that night, when the estate had fallen silent, she made her move. Pretending to be cooperative had its perks. Rashid had left her unguarded inside her lavishly furnished room. Big mistake. She scanned the space for anything useful. Her phone had been taken, but Rashid had underestimated her. A hidden compartment in her jewelry box still held the tiny tracking device she had stashed long ago. With trembling hands, she activated it, praying Daniel or someone would pick up the signal. Step 1. Done. Now, step 2. Escape. She slipped out of her room, her bare feet silent against the marble floors. The hallway was empty. Too easy. Her pulse pounded as she made her way toward the back exit. Just a few more steps. Then a voice behind her. Smooth, amused, and far too calm. "Going somewhere, Habibti?" Her blood ran cold. She turned slowly, and there he was, leaning against the wall, arms crossed, smirking like the devil himself. You didn't really think I'd let you go that easily, did you? 98% of you watching this haven't subscribed yet. It's completely free, and it gives us the motivation to bring you more thrilling real-life stories like this. So hit that subscribe button now. You don't want to miss what happens next. Emily's heart pounded like a drum in her chest. Rashid's smirk sent a shiver down her spine. It wasn't just arrogance, it was amusement. He had expected this. He had been waiting for her to try. "You disappoint me, Emily," he sighed, stepping closer, his dark eyes locked onto hers. "I thought you were smarter than this." Emily swallowed hard, but refused to back down. "And I thought you were better than this, Rashid. But here we are. Me, trying to escape, and you, playing the villain in your own love story." He chuckled softly. "Villains don't love their women. I do." His fingers brushed against her jaw, but she yanked away. "And that's why you'll never truly leave me." A fire lit inside her. Enough was enough. If Rashid thought she was going to break, he had another thing coming. She took a deep breath, softening her expression. "Maybe you're right," she whispered. His smirk faltered. "What?" She stepped closer, placing her hands on his chest. "Maybe. I ran because I was scared. Not of you, but of what I felt for you. Maybe I needed time to realize that no one could ever love me the way you do." His eyes darkened with curiosity. He hadn't expected this. She looked up at him, her fingers tracing slow circles on his chest. "Let me prove it," she whispered. "Let me show you that I belong to you." Rashid's breathing hitched, his mind battling between suspicion and desire. She knew his weaknesses, his pride, his ego, his need for control. "All right, Habibti," he murmured, his lips curling into a victorious smirk. "Then prove it." She smiled, but inside she was screaming. Because this was it. Her only chance to turn the tables. She leaned in, her lips just inches from his. Then, in a flash, she grabbed the dagger from his belt, spun behind him, and pressed the cold steel against his throat. His body went rigid. For the first time, Rashid Al-Fayed wasn't in control. "I told you, Rashid, you don't get to decide who I love." She tightened her grip. "And I do not love you." The doors burst open. Daniel? The police? Guns raised. "Drop the weapon, Rashid!" Daniel's voice was sharp, furious. Rashid clenched his jaw, his muscles tense, but then he laughed, a low, dark chuckle. "Well played, Habibti. Well played." She stepped away as the police moved in, cuffing him. As Emily ran into Daniel's arms, one thought burned in her mind. Rashid had underestimated her. And that was his biggest mistake. Emily thought it was over. That Rashid was finally out of her life. That she had won. But as she sat in the police station, wrapped in Daniel's arms, watching Rashid being dragged away in cuffs, she saw it. That smirk. That damn smirk. "You think this is the end, Habibti?" Rashid's voice was calm, controlled. Too controlled for a man who had just lost everything. "You've only won the first round." A chill ran down her spine. "Shut up," Daniel snapped. "You're finished, Rashid." But Rashid only chuckled. "Am I?" He turned his head, locking eyes with Emily one last time. "You'll miss me, Emily. I know you will." The officers shoved him into the police van, and the doors slammed shut, cutting off his voice. But his words still echoed in her mind. The days passed. The media exploded with headlines. Billionaire kidnaps ex-wife on wedding day. Rashid's empire crumbled. His assets were frozen. His influence shattered. He was facing years in prison. And yet, something felt off. Emily tried to move on. She and Daniel left the city, escaping to a quiet coastal town to finally start their life together. But even there, even in the safety of Daniel's arms, Rashid's voice lingered in her head. "You'll miss me, Habibti." Then one night, the nightmares began. She woke up gasping, her heart racing, the feeling of Rashid's presence so real, it sent ice through her veins. And then came the letter. A single white envelope slipped under their door. No return address, no fingerprints. Just a note written in perfect, familiar handwriting. I always take what's mine. See you soon. Emily's breath caught in her throat.
Daniel grabbed the note, his face dark with anger. It's impossible. He's in prison.
But Emily wasn't so sure. Her hands trembled as she turned on the news. And there it was, breaking headlines, sirens, footage of a prison riot, and the one thing she never wanted to hear.
Billionaire Rashid Al-Fayed has escaped.
Her blood ran cold.
Daniel clenched his fists. We'll run. We'll leave the country. But Emily shook her head, eyes burning with determination. Number, I'm done running. Because now this wasn't about escape. This wasn't about hiding. This was about ending it once and for all. Because if Rashid thought she would always belong to him,
then he had just made his last and biggest mistake. Emily's hands trembled as she clutched the note, the words burning into her mind like a brand. She had spent so long looking over her shoulder, dreading the shadow that had haunted her dreams. But this was different. This was real. Rashid had escaped, and he was coming for her. Daniel paced across the small living room of their coastal hideaway, his face a storm of emotions. We need to leave. Tonight. I'll get new passports, money, whatever we need. We can disappear. But Emily stood firm, her gaze steady. Number running won't fix this. It's time to face him. Daniel turned to her, disbelief etched into his features. You can't be serious. He's dangerous, Emily. He won't stop until he gets what he wants.
She lifted her chin, her voice a whisper, filled with a quiet rage. Then let him come. I'm not the same terrified woman he controlled. I won't let him dictate my life anymore.
They spent the next days preparing. Daniel reinforced the house, installed security cameras, and set up alerts. Emily, meanwhile, dove into Rashid's world. Old contacts, hidden allies, anyone who might still be loyal to him. If Rashid was coming, she would be ready.
Days turned into weeks, and with each passing moment, the tension grew thicker. Every shadow, every unexpected noise made her heart race, but she refused to live in fear. Not anymore. Then one stormy night, it happened.
The power cut out. Darkness swallowed the house. Emily's phone buzzed. A single text. I'm here. Her breath hitched. She turned to Daniel, who was already grabbing his gun. Stay behind me, he whispered, edging toward the front door. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the figure standing in the rain. Rashid, soaked but still composed, as if he belonged there, as if this reunion was meant to be. You look well, Emily, Rashid called out, his voice smooth as ever. But running doesn't suit you. I told you. We're meant to be together. Emily stepped forward, ignoring Daniel's frantic whisper to stay back. Her voice was steady. No, Rashid. What we had was never love. It was control, obsession, and I won't be a prisoner in your twisted world anymore.
Rashid's smile faltered. You think this is a choice? You're mine. You've always been mine. Daniel raised the gun, his hands shaking. Leave now, or I swear I'll... Rashid laughed, a dark, chilling sound. Shoot me. Go ahead. But it won't change anything. She'll still come back to me. She always does.
Emily clenched her fists, stepping closer to Rashid, close enough to see the madness in his eyes. I'm not afraid of you. Not anymore. And this ends now.
In a swift movement, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small device. Rashid's eyes widened as she pressed the button. A piercing alarm blared through the night. The signal to the police, to Daniel's contacts, to anyone who could help. Rashid lunged forward, his hand gripping her wrist painfully. You think a little noise will stop me? But before he could react, Daniel tackled him, the two men crashing to the ground. Rain pounded around them, thunder roaring in the sky. Emily watched, heart in her throat, as the two struggled. Rashid was strong, his years of privilege hiding a dangerous strength. But Daniel fought with desperation, fueled by love and fear.
They rolled across the muddy ground, fists flying. Rashid managed to pin Daniel down, his hands closing around his throat. Emily's blood turned to ice. Without thinking, she grabbed a fallen branch and swung with all her might. The wood cracked against Rashid's head, and he collapsed, unconscious. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Emily dropped the branch, rushing to Daniel's side. His face was bruised, his breathing ragged, but he was alive. "I told you not to get involved," he choked out with a weak smile. She laughed through her tears, pressing her forehead to his. "And miss all the fun?" "Never." The police arrived moments later, dragging Rashid's limp form away. This time, there would be no escape. No hidden allies to bail him out. His empire was gone, his power shattered. In the days that followed, Emily and Daniel rebuilt their lives, stronger together. She learned to let go of the fear, to reclaim her freedom. And Rashid, he was nothing but a ghost of a past she had finally laid to rest. Months later, as they stood on the beach, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Daniel wrapped his arms around her. "It's really over, isn't it?" She nodded, a smile playing on her lips. "Yes, it's over." But as the waves whispered against the shore, she couldn't help but glance over her shoulder just once, because in her heart she knew some battles never truly end. But she was ready for whatever came next.